Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ormond Beach, Florida. It is December 20th, 2017. It's a beautiful night here in Ormond Beach. You are watching Grassroots Motorsports Live, presented by CRC Industries. It is an honor to be with you, as it is every Wednesday. Thank you very much for joining us. Hey, before we start the show, if everybody could do me a huge favor, go to your little dealie down here that you're watching us on, and somewhere down there, there is a button that allows you to share this video, a button that allows you to like this video, a button that allows you to subscribe to the video feed that you are currently watching. If you would do any or all of those things, we would absolutely be in your debt forever. Folks, we got a great show tonight. It is a fantastic holiday season. We are hanging out here as with you know, a huge chunk of the company right here in the shop tonight, and we're going to talk tonight about a couple of the cars that we have floating around that haven't made it into the magazine very much. These are cars that are sort of part of our personal fleet, but that you may not have seen in the magazine except for a few fleeting glances because they haven't come up as official project cars, or we just haven't found it necessary to really do too much modification to them. But they're fantastic cars. They are pieces, sort of pieces of our corporate history, pieces of our corporate personality that we want to talk to you guys a little bit about tonight, including Tim Sutter's 1967 Shelby Mustang and our editor David Wallen's 1984 Porsche Carrera, Porsche 911 Carrera. So we are stoked to have, I want to say we're stoked to have our guests here tonight. It's just like being at the office today, basically. Everybody's come over and we're hanging out and we're talking about cars. So we will get, oh my God, and we have people sharing already. Rob has shared, and yeah, hi Rob, thank you very much for sharing. We appreciate that. If everybody else could do the same thing, we would appreciate that as well. Let's get rolling. Folks, let me bring in my friend, my boss, fantastic guy in his own right, Mr. Tim Sutter. Good to see you. Good to see you. After a year, your first time officially on the show. We're wearing matching shirts too. How cool is that?
Doing a great job, and let you do what you do.
So,
plus, it's late at night. I'm old, man. I got to go to bed.
Thanks for bringing the Shelby out. You've had this car for a couple of years now. Let's move around the back because they don't want to look at us. They want to look at this thing, which is far more impressive. So let's talk about a little bit of a history lesson here. Not a lot of people might know that Grassroots Motorsports Magazine, originally Auto X Magazine, was started with the funds from a Shelby Mustang.
Back in the early 80s, I had a 66 Shelby. I had it parked outside of an apartment house. I couldn't afford to keep it. I couldn't afford to eat, and I ended up selling it. And we got about I actually got $6 grand plus a 64 Ranchero, which I actually drove as my daily driver for a few years. And it wasn't that it was that long ago. This was in, like I said, in the 80s, but it was still an old piece of crap, and but I drove that. So for the last 35 years, I've bitched at Margie, my partner, and said, you know, this company owes me my Shelby back. And finally, about 5 years ago, prices, during the recession, prices dropped. And she said, Jesus, I'm tired of hearing about it. If you want a damn Shelby, we're doing okay now. Prices are down. Find a project and get one. So I ended up, I was looking for a 65 or 6 again, and a buddy of mine, Tom Cotter, says, you know, I don't have a 65 or 6. He's not a dealer, but he dabbles in these things. And he said, I got this 67 lime gold. It's a 4-speed factory air car, one of 11 made. I said, well, I'm not really interested in a 67.
But I think now, all respect to your 66 and then the 65, I think this is a better car in general.
You know, that's what I went up there and I looked at it and I said, these things are so freaking cool. Why don't I want a 67 with all its scoops and spoilers and by 67 they had power steering and power brakes, and this one, like I said, it has factory air. And I was like, you know, I'm getting a little older, and going on rallies and tours, this would be a little more comfortable. And the thing was barely running, but within 5 minutes of looking at it, I said, yeah, I'll take it.
So you've had Shelbys forever, and your dad was a Ford dealer, so you know what they are and what they mean. At the time you acquired this, what was sort of the Shelby Mustang hierarchy of 65, 66, 67,
well,
68. What? How did they all fit in?
65 is always going to be worth the most. They made, I think it was 562 of them, and but actually it was, visually at least, it was closest to a standard Mustang. Now 66, they added the quarter windows. They actually decontented that. They took a lot of the Shelby stuff out because honestly it was rough as hell to drive on the street. So and then by 60s, now 67 was considered the last real Shelby. The last year they were made out in LA. Okay. Actually right next to the LAX airport that we fly into constantly.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you could actually see the airport from the Shelby factory.
Oh, wow.
So 67 was considered the last year of a hypo. 289. After that I had a 302 4-barrel. It was only 250 horse in 68. So yeah, that was kind of the last year. So the most valuable still 65 of the real ones. The 67's the coolest looking, so to speak. If you like the swoops and stuff.
So last one, so how has that changed? I mean, obviously
it hasn't.
All really. Shelbys have gotten more valuable dramatically in the last few years.
Yes, they have.
But
when I sold
to where they
when
were.
I sold my 66, as I said, I got $6 grand plus a $1,000 Ranchero. That car today would be worth probably $250,000 or at least 200. It was a nice car. The 67 is worth less than the 66, which is worth less than the 65, but still, this is even and I kind of left it as a rat rod. It's easier to take care of, but it's still probably worth, well over 100,000.
So this was the last of the real Shelbys. After this, what was how did the production process differ? Was he just licensing the name?
Well, they went up to Livonia, Michigan, and Carcraft took over, and basically it was, I don't want to insult the guys with the later cars. It's still a cool car, still different. It had the fiberglass, but it was more of an appearance package than a performance package after 67.
So what was their production process like? What was Shelby getting in LA? Was he getting bodies in white?
Yeah, they got bodies in white, and they bought the fiberglass. And if you look, the fiberglass, the hood's fiberglass, the rear deck and the rear fender end caps are fiberglass.
Yeah, give it, Chris.
And the stuff didn't really. I mean, this is the way it was.
Yeah,
the gaps aren't that good. I mean, today everything's over restored, but back then, that's kind of the way it was.
And you've done some paint work to this and a little bit of body work, but it's never been quote unquote restored.
No, we brought it. We saved what we had to. I mean, they say, patina's cool, but rust holes in the fenders were not patina.
Especially in Florida, because they're not going to get better on their own.
But I left some of the paint still original. We kind of did it this way on purpose. Underneath, it's all been restored to pretty much concourse specs, and on top, we just kind of left it kind of rough and tumble because we take it to track days, we take it on 1,000-mile rallies. We're not afraid to drive it.
So give us a little map here, even panel by panel if we have to. Like, is this a standard Mustang piece?
The fender is standard Mustang. Okay. Of course, this is the 70s alarm that somebody put on it. I thought it was kind of silly, so I left it. The stripes are still original paint underneath them. The scoops, top and bottom, functional. In 67, they were still functional. So those are brake scoops. Those are just fresh air scoops, which you may or may not need, but they're cool looking. The roof is standard. The quarter panels were standard. The hood is obviously glass item. Cowl is standard Mustang.
So where in the back here, where does the Shelby?
Well, there's an end cap.
The deck lid is?
The deck lid is Shelby. There's an end cap here. Let's get back in the camera here, I guess. So this end cap and this is Shelby, but again, that's the way they fit. And I could make it better, but I kind of left it.
And then taillights are obviously
taillights, and the rear and this rear taillight panel are 67 Shelby. 68s look kind of different. Big dual exhaust, that's stock Shelby. Although we've got a MagnaFlow exhaust system.
So I hate to keep moving Chris around here, but let's go back up to the front and take a look under the hood. So what was he doing chassis wise to these things? Like underneath, how much is different from what they started with?
Well, originally in '65 they actually reconfigured and lowered the A-arms. It was pretty much, you know, an all-out race car. Coney shocks. Now by '67 Coneys were optional, but '65 they were stock. It has a big 1-inch front sway bar. This one has 550-pound front springs, which are stronger than original. But on the original ones, well, all of them have, at least the first 3 years, have 9-inch Ford rear ends. This one's got limited slip. They originally were 389 final drive, so I could go on rallies and tours. We put 325 gears in this.
So actually, this is an interesting comment. Corey says that he had a '68 GT-500, and it was a dog. And we kind of romanticize these performance cars from the '60s, but when you start looking at the numbers, the actual horsepower figures of these were impressive for the day, but
the biggest factor was the tires. Actually,
yeah.
I mean, you had polyglass E60 or F60 tires, and it didn't matter how much power you had; you would just spin those things. You know, they only had. Let me see. This had.
This was a 289
these are 15
hypo.
by 7s,
yeah.
but well, this is actually a Ford crate motor.
Well, right,
I have the original.
But the factory motor was a
yeah, it was
289 hypo, which was like 305 horsepower.
300 original hypo was 271 horse.
Okay.
And then Shelby put the intake, a different carb, and headers, and that was rated at 306 horsepower. But you got to remember, these were all fake horsepower back then. So
and this what's in here now is from Ford Racing.
Yeah, this is a 500 horse, 363 cubic inch small block based on a 302. We thought it'd be fun to put this engine in. Plus, we didn't get a lot of the original engine, and it was a quick and easy way to build it. And Ford actually wanted to showcase the fact that all the original air conditioning and original power steering and all the accessories would fit on this 363 cubic inch engine that they were just starting to market. And the engine sells for about 10 grand. Actually, street price I think is about 8,500 bucks. It includes a 2-year warranty. I mean, what engine builder gives you that?
Well, and you couldn't build it for that.
No,
I mean,
no. So it was a screaming deal, and we said, you know what? Let's see if it works. And as you can see, it does. And it's now that's 500 horse. They rated them no accessories, open headers, and they were using, I think, a Torker and some big Holly carb. So this one's about 375, 380 at the wheels. With air conditioning, with an alternator, with essentially stock. Well, I put headers on it, but by '67 they didn't have headers on it.
I'll tell you, so it actually was a little bit less than the Mustang than our 2012.
Yeah.
And okay.
And car weighs about just under 3,200 pounds.
Oh wow, so it's pretty light. So
yeah, it's light.
Did Shelby do anything chassis-wise besides bolt-ons? Did they do any seam welding or lightning or anything?
No.
So underneath it's pretty much standard Mustang except for
now in
hard parts?
'65 there was what's called an R model Shelby, and that was a lot more radical. At about a 350 horse race motor. Now racing a Shelby today, if you have less than 500 horse, you might as well just leave it in the paddock. But I mean, they won national championships back then with what they claimed was about 350 horsepower. It had plexiglass rear window. It had pull-up side windows. It was a real race car. So
yeah, let's talk about vintage racing a little bit, because obviously there's a lot of Shelbys out at the vintage races. If you're going to build a vintage race car, do you start with something that's already been raced? Do you start with a base Mustang and build a Shelby out of it?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
The first thing you do is you call Kurt Vogt. Cobra Automotive, the guy in our world for Shelby Mustangs. Kurt's a good buddy of mine, but and I've actually been toying with the idea of building a racing Shelby. And he said if you want to start with a base Mustang, you're talking 5 to 15 grand, depending if you want just this, a notchback or a fast. Fastbacks are valuable, he said, and then you're going to put, well, that Boss 302 we drove and visit at the Midi last year, he's got something like $250,000 in that. But so I mean, you're going to spend 50 or 100 grand to make. You're not going to be Kurt, but you're going to have a decent Mustang. Right. Now, if you want to start with a Shelby, basically a VIN plate, because you're talking about a basket case, rusted out car, wrong motor. Now this car has the correct trans and the correct diff, numbers matching. All the panels on this car are numbers matching. But if you're willing to take one that's had issues, you can still buy an early Shelby with issues for 75 to 100,000. So if you took that and spent the 100 grand on it, you would get your money back. So, but of course, if you wrecked it
until you stuff it in the wall outside of Turn 5 or Atlanta.
The thing is if you call National Parts Depot, a bumper for this thing's like 119 bucks. Fenders are 99. You know, everything on this car except for, like, it's funny. You got a $100 bumper on this car. It's a $3,500 steering wheel. The original steering wheel is that valuable. So any Mustang stuff is cheap and readily available. Any Shelby stuff
is expensive and rare.
You know, a lot of it's reproduced. Intakes, exhaust, a lot of that stuff's reproduced. So, you know, that would be the question in vintage racing, whether you want to start with a regular Mustang. And what you're getting at there is eligibility. I mean, if you start with a real Shelby, I didn't build this to go vintage racing. No, I built this to run on our Orange Blossom tour.
You're not wasting any time, are you?
No.
we just got a note from our producer that
hey, this isn't my first rodeo.
No, it's not. But you bring up a great point that a big use of these cars is for stuff like tours. Like the tour industry is a budding industry, one that we are involving ourselves in, trying to do a better job than some of these other guys.
Yeah.
And these are great cars for that.
You know, a Mustang or a Corvette is a great car for these things. They're reliable. I took this out to Montana. There's a place you can run at 120 miles an hour. Not officially.
Not legally, but yeah.
Well, actually,
you've heard.
Yeah.
And you know,
I saw it done once.
Yeah. To get back to our tour, we have taken the idea of these tours, put our own grassroots motorsports, classic motorsports spin on it, and we let you come hang out with us in the Southeast and not only just in Florida, but up in the Carolinas.
Yeah, Tail of the Dragon.
So.
I mean, something like this is a blast on a tour.
So, let's talk about something else a little bit too. Haggerty now has a new program where you can do sort of a ride share, or not necessarily ride sharing, but a drive share program.
Yeah.
Have you thought about maybe having this thing earn its keep a little bit?
Well, no. Well, first off, this new drive share, it's basically an Airbnb for classic cars. So you could fly in anywhere in the country and rent a classic car. Now there are exceptions to their list. So I was like, well, let's go rent a 427 Cobra. Not on the list. But I mean, you know, mid 60s Corvettes. I don't know if Shelby Mustangs, but there's lots of Mustangs.
I've seen some Mustangs on it.
So I mean, you could rent something and go on one of these events.
Let's take a look inside quick. Actually, push it up a few feet so Chris can get around in here. Go forward just a couple feet, so Chris doesn't have to go around this big door. I'd forgotten. So you know this obviously, but my first car was a '67 Mustang.
Right.
That it was just a 6-cylinder 200, but you know I had forgotten almost how these were fairly modern cars for the day. I mean, they still have low back seats and obviously
69 they went to headrests.
Yeah, but you know it's a roomy car inside.
Yeah, it's
everything's laid out
seats
real
are comfortable.
Nice.
So
it's got a deep purple 8-track in the.
Yeah, that's an original
awesome.
8-track, and a buddy of mine gave me that deep purple 8-track. I said, you know, I had the Carpenters, but I think a deep purple fits the mood of this thing a little better than the Carpenters.
So what is Shelby specific inside here?
Well, the steering wheel, the interior on a 67 was a deluxe, what they called the deluxe interior, which is these cool door panels, the better quality seats with the comfort weave interior. And the console's something I threw in there. That's aftermarket from a National Parts Depot. It has the center gauges are Shelby, and
so I see an 8,000 RPM tach. That's obviously a Shelby piece, right?
Yeah,
Like that wasn't the stock Mustang.
Yeah, you don't want
and the 140 mile an hour.
You don't want to run a stock hypo to
no
8,000 RPM. But and I believe the Shelby had the 140 mile an hour speedometer. And then there's an integral roll bar. That's real. These useless, I mean, beautiful harnesses that I don't use because they look dangerous.
Yeah, that doesn't look like you'd want to even have.
So in 65, they had just a package shelf.
Okay.
And then in 66, they had a pretty good scam, because what they did is they so when they got these cars, they had to take, this is a back seat deal here, if you want to see it.
Oh shoot! I didn't know you had.
So that's a back seat. So what they did in 66 is they sold you the back seat. So what they did is they actually, when they got the cars, the back seat was in it. So they would charge you extra to basically leave it in and call it an option.
So, so our friend Andy Hollis is. I
know that guy.
Yeah, watching. Did you know that he was originally a Shelby guy as well?
I think I did hear
that. I always never think of him as a Shelby guy, because if you're a reader of Grassroots Motorsports, obviously you've seen Andy Hollis's tire tests and tech stories and all that great stuff. Andy is probably most well known for being a Honda autocrosser, a Mazda autocrosser, now a McLaren got check engine light monitor, and
a McLaren mechanic.
Yeah. And he got his start in a Shelby Mustang, and you realize, like, at that time the Shelby Mustang, it was special in the 60s, but it was not the type of sort of unobtainable iconic piece of history that it is now.
They were expensive. I mean, they were in the $5,000 range. I mean,
and a stock Mustang was what, 3,200, 3,500?
Well, a little more than that once you got a few options on it. But you know, it's, you think today, well, $1,000 more, but $1,000 more, that was 25% more. That's taking you into a whole nother category. Yeah. I mean,
so when was the explosion? Because obviously,
wait a minute, it hasn't exploded, has it?
Even since you bought this one, the value has gone up, you know, probably 20 or 30%. Yeah, well, but when did they go from mildly interesting used cars to, you know, auction-based?
Well, they were always considered somewhat special, but like I said, back in '82, I thought it did real well to get $6,000 or $7,000 for one, and they've more slowly climbed, I would say. But you know, actually, there was an explosion 15 years ago when everybody started getting into the collector car thing. And this is a real, you know, I don't want to be offensive, but this was a blue collar. This is a blue collar collectible. Yeah. I mean, your hoity-toity guy with the ascot, he wanted a Ferrari. Your plumber that ended up making some big bucks wanted one of these, because that was the car he had when he was a kid. So when you know, a lot of those guys like make some money, especially after there was some storms and some guys made some money. They all came into the market. They wanted the
car that was
road
cool
runners.
They wanted
these. Yeah. They wanted 427 Corvettes. So that kind of had a surge in the blue collar collector market. So, and whereas a Ferrari guy, you know, probably didn't have much use for this.
But now, I mean, the prices are approaching Ferrari value on these.
Well, Ferraris have gone up too, but
true. But I mean, you know, this is a six-figure car now.
Yeah. The sad thing is it is still a Mustang. Yeah. And you can take a regular '67, a nice '67 Mustang, V8 Mustang, is a $25,000 car. And for another $25,000, you can buy the fiberglass and make it look like this, but. You want a real one or not? If you want a real one, you got to pay.
Speaking of a real one, I want to at least take a look at the front suspension, because it's neat seeing a real suspension. Roll it up on the lift for me, and let me talk to our friends out here. Our producer can come over and help out.
You're a star for now.
So yeah, so Andy says he paid $2,200 for his '67 GT-500, and $5,000 for a '66 GT-350. Have you ever tracked down what happened to your old car, Tim?
Actually, I did. Yeah. This is a sad story.
Oh.
back in '97, I found the car again.
Oh, really?
And it was in Orlando. I sold it to a dealer in Titusville. He ended up selling it to a Eastern airline pilot. Remember Eastern?
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, don't roll the car.
You got one more arm over here, Tom.
yeah, he wanted to sell it, and he had re-restored it. And in '97, I went as high as 19,000, and he came down to 21,000.
Oh, God.
I had little kids. I needed to buy them a house to live in, to get into a better school district, and I just couldn't justify it. I've kicked myself ever since, because since then they've gone way up and down.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and now I've lost track of it again. The Shelby Club is an amazing club and has a registry, and they keep track of every car.
Speaking of that, actually, back here on the Autobooks-Aerobooks.com bookshelf, we actually have a little older version of the Shelby American World Registry. They have the new book there at Autobooks, along with a lot of other great Shelby books. But the Shelby Club tracks every single one of these cars to the best of their ability.
And that's what's really added to the value, because they've done such a good job of keeping all the records to make it a true collectible.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Shelby books, Autobooks has got a new one by Chuck Cantwell, who was actually one of the original guys that did the car.
Oh, wow.
I haven't read through all of it, but I did get a copy. It is an amazing book telling the Shelby story, basically 65 through 67. Told from a guy with his pictures, the guy that built it. I mean, that's as real as it gets.
That's super cool. And yeah, speaking of Autobooks, if you guys were here last week, we talked to the folks at Autobooks, did a big preview of some stuff they have coming out, some of the stuff they have already, and from what we hear, a bunch of people called the next day and bought books. So, thank you for watching. Thank you. Yeah, you were exactly. Well, thank you for supporting something that you enjoy by supporting the people that support that. That is a big deal for us. So we'll take this moment to tell you guys about Autobooks Aerobooks. Check them out at autobooks-aerobooks.com. All kinds of fantastic reading material, books, DVDs, collectible models, everything from cars, airplanes, motorcycles, boats, anything with wings, wheels, and an engine. Autobooks has tens of thousands of books right there in the shop. You can buy them, you can read them. They are fantastic. Also, check out our friends at CRC Industries. Everybody, look, here, in fact, here's how authentic this is. This can of brake clean is about half full and has greasy fingerprints all over it, because I had to go to my specially prepared advertising shelf over here and grab a can of brake clean yesterday when I was putting some bushings in my MR2. We have been fans of CRC for just as long, if not longer, than they have been supporters of ours, as can be witnessed by this can of CRC glass and dash cleaner that's almost empty. I am going to be so sad when I finally use the last of this CRC glass and dash cleaner. Okay, good. Because I'm going to miss this when it's gone, because it is fantastic. We are huge fans of theirs. They are supporters of this show, so if you could do us the great favor of going and sending them a note, buying their products, just supporting the folks that support our world, we would really, really appreciate that. Check them out at crcindustries.com. Go to any hardware store, go to any auto parts store, and you're going to find CRC stuff. I know you have a can of brake clean in your garage somewhere, but you might not have like their display cleaner. We use this to clean all of our lenses and all of our computer screens before the show. It's great stuff. crcindustries.com. Sounds like these guys have a wheel off over here, so let's take a look. So here's one thing that I was always jealous of when I was doing the S197 Mustang project is A-arms. I had to contend with struts, obviously, and these original Mustangs were A-arm cars, and a pretty fair geometry in these cars. Although it's weird seeing how high up that Coney shock is mounted. The cars have just gotten so much shorter now, but talk about, these are fairly good handling cars out of the box.
We've wheeled the crap out of it at the track and had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, I mean,
modern cars handle better, but it's pretty benign. It's easy to drive. It's a lot of fun. It's got great brakes thanks to Willwood. You know, like I said, it's 550-pound springs, Coney shocks. We've adjusted the camber to get a little more negative camber in it. It's got energy suspension bushings on a 1-inch Shelby anti-roll bar, so it goes pretty good.
And it looks like you saved quite a bit of weight on the brakes too.
Yeah, they were lighter.
Aluminum hats and steel rotors. Oh wow, yeah. that is really light. So a lot of Mustang stuff was kind of Ford corporate stuff, wasn't it? Like this is fairly common parts. What are we actually looking at here?
It all started as a Falcon.
Yeah,
which came out in 1960, and the Mustang chassis is actually a little wider between the frame rails than an early Falcon.
But like uprights,
pretty darn similar. Yeah,
uprights are Falcon uprights and control arms and stuff.
Very similar.
So what do you have for adjustments? Like are these shims in here? What's going on there?
It's been a while since I put this together. You can see the cheap parts. It's ripped a little bit. Yeah. You know, the replacement parts are like that. Well, we've shimmed it out here for more camber.
Okay.
And it's not really a ton of adjustment. You can adjust toe, obviously.
And it looks like you actually have some adjustment on the camber there too.
Yeah, you got camber adjustment there.
Is that stock or is that an aftermarket camber? Is it really?
I think so.
Yeah, you moved the inner mounting point for the upper A arms.
Oh, no, so he's not going to lower A arms.
Yeah, Chris. You see
the concentric bolt.
See the eccentrics there. So that's pretty cool. So you can just crank some camber into it that way.
Camber. Yeah, and we did the Shelby relocation up here where we moved the inner up in a little bit.
So how do you have to actually cut on the subframe to do that, or the unibody to do that, or how's that accomplished?
Yeah, you move it up a little bit. This is a kit that helps you move it up a little bit.
Okay, cool.
To get you a little better geometry. That was a 65 modification that you know, any guy that has an early Mustang does track stuff with.
It's a Shelby thing.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to throw it a little bit higher and let's take a look at the. We'll be able to let's get Chris under here. So, long tube headers. That's pretty awesome going into.
Yeah, and with this 363 has what's, I think it's called the Z heads.
Okay.
And you can't use a standard header, so I think it's close to 8 quarts.
Jesus.
I think 7.5, 8 quarts. And that's from Ford Racing. Yeah, we put limited slip in the rear. That's the original rear end. Changed the gears.
So this is a 9-inch?
Yeah, it's a Ford 9-inch.
Okay.
Which is what they came with.
And a Gary's driveline sticker on the drive shaft.
Yeah, he balanced the drive shaft, and these are from Cobra Automotive. They're to basically just tie down. Great idea for tie downs. I mean, they'll fit anything, but they sell them.
Oh, they just bolt right on.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic idea. So one of the things, when we got a chance to check out Kurt Voigt's car at the Midi last year, I was surprised that even in a car like that, that's a cutting edge vintage car, you know, if you can use that oxymoron.
No, that's a cutting edge. Trust me on that one.
Right, but it still uses leaf springs in the back.
It has to. Yeah. Now he's got them floating a little bit.
Okay.
So they don't bind coming into a corner. This is stock. In '67, it had high performance Ford rear springs. So.
Could you do a coil conversion on something like this?
You can, but it wouldn't be vintage legal.
Well, what if you just wanted to make a cool '67 Mustang? Or would it?
You know, Shelby originally tested an independent suspension, and he said at the track, it didn't help you any. It just cost a lot of money. So that's why these cars. I mean, they were done to a budget, but they did test independent suspension back in '65 and decided it wasn't worth the hassle. For track, you got to remember, a track is a very smooth environment.
Yeah.
And a road is a rougher environment. That's where you need independent suspension, not at the track.
So here's something I don't really see back here is any kind of ladder. Well,
Springs.
I'm looking for lateral control, and the only real lateral control you have is the fact that the shocks are kind of tilted over at a 45-degree
that's
angle.
the way they were. Yeah, my Tiger's got a pannered bar, but this does not.
So if you were to add like a pannered bar or a Watts link to something like this, I mean, you've got plenty of structure up there.
Yeah, but you don't. When you have a real Shelby Mustang, you don't start cutting and welding.
You don't start cutting and welding stuff.
You know, and you can see now this red oxide primer, that would have been original, and so underneath it's all been basically done to correct restoration standards.
So
it's a little dirty now. But
you redid some of this primer.
everything's underdone. Yeah, everything's been done underneath here.
Was
The whole car's been restored except for the outside because we wanted to kind of leave it a rat rod.
Yeah, and it never really. I mean, you never did like a complete frame off. It was almost like a rolling restoration.
Yeah.
Kind of a piece at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, we got close.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of work on this thing. We just didn't. You just can't see it looking at the top.
Where was the rust?
There was a little rust in the floors, and sadly they had replaced the floors, and they probably didn't need to. They probably only need to replace a little patch.
Is that a fairly common Mustang rust?
Well,
spot?
it's a time thing. In the old days, you'd put floors in something. Now you replace. You know, the conventional wisdom now is you replace as little as you need to. So, but it wasn't bad rusty, really. I mean, these are the rock. I didn't mess with the rockers; those are original. Had a little rust on the doors, and that was it. And a little rusted right by the rear deck lid.
What do you know about the history of this car? When you found it in the Carolinas, where did it come
I don't
from
know a
before
lot
that?
about the history of it. Actually, I made a couple calls to what I thought was the original owner, but the trail went cold, and I don't know a lot about it. I think it was originally built out in San Jose, which is where most of them were built.
Awesome. All right, thank you very much for bringing it out. I haven't seen the thing for months now. I'm glad it finally came out. But actually, when was the last time you drove it?
I drive it once in a while.
Okay, but I mean, it fired right up today. I know we used it.
That's the great thing about a Ford.
We used it for some editorial today,
It's not cantankerous at all.
So here, Tom, let me get you off the.
I was gonna say I need a little. I don't mean JG height, but a little lower.
Say when.
Yeah.
That's good. Let me get this wheel on.
So, Chris, why don't you just give him a quick walk around now that you got a nice view of the thing, and we'll stop talking.
Did you got torque rings?
Back. It's like 93 right now.
Going down. Let's see. Where's the socket? It's on the.
Chris, watch your arm. I'm putting your hook in. So I imagine one of the nice things about a car like this is there's no mystery when it comes to restoring this.
No,
you don't have to search for any knowledge.
Knowledge base is fantastic.
And I'll use that as a segue for you to plug your latest acquisition.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, I'm still obviously very involved in grassroots motorsports, but I'm the resident old guy, so I do the old car stuff for classic motorsports. And we just picked up a 62 Elva Mark 6 sports racer. And a guy I bought it from for peanuts said I hadn't really had any time to do any research on it. I got a hold of the Elva register and they said, oh yeah, that's a special car. That was the factory entrant at Sebring in 1962. And I got nothing in this thing. It's a pretty valuable piece, so But it's a basket case, so we're gonna go all through it, learn about Coventry Climax engines, and this is a rear-engine sports racer from 1962. It is super cool.
Now I know where there is a supercharged 4A GZE.
No.
Sitting in a garage.
That's not what you do with a Sebring entrant Elva that's probably worth over 100 grand. You don't do that.
Oh, that'd be fun for one throttle application.
I've been fishing for 2 weeks.
No, if you saw the flimsy little tubes that this thing was made of, I don't think you'd want to put a big motor.
And you were telling me they aren't. It's so picture a early '60s sports racer with basically super thin wall tubing. It's not even welded. The thing is brazed together.
Well, that was common because that was quicker and easier to fix.
Well, of course, and when you're talking about a race car that goes 150 miles an hour, quick and easy are the two.
Well, if you should damage it, to be able to just heat it and it come apart, and then you can. Racing's a pretty good way to build a car.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not crazy.
It's not crazy,
and it's certainly easier to repair.
Well. All right, we'll let you out of here. Thank you very much. I will see you tomorrow.
Yep.
And we will get a Porsche in here now from one iconic performance automobile. Sorry, I just backed Chris up into a pile of lumber over there. From one iconic performance automobile to another, we're about to bring in David Wallen's 1984 Porsche 911 Carrera. In the meantime, while we are waiting for them to... Oh my God, Tim! Autobooks Aerobooks, our friends at autobooks-aerobooks.com, has Elva books.
I have it already. I bought it.
Okay, well, so we can't sell them that one Elva book.
We're not putting the lift.
We're not going to lift it. Yeah. So this is pretty good. That was a fantastic transition, actually, you guys.
Thank you. We rehearsed it.
All right, from so we just had two of what I consider to be the best sounding automobiles. One pulling out and one pulling in. This is a 1984 Porsche 911 Carrera, owned by my friend David Wallens, editor of Grassroots Motorsports, Classic Motorsports, over here. I mostly did this. No, come on in.
Okay.
I mostly did this tonight because like two of my favorite cars that hang around I have not seen for a while.
Me neither.
So tell you like Tim got in while the getting was good on 911s and guessed. I don't know if I want to say you guessed right on it because I think we all had a feeling that things were about to get good for 911s, but you bought this when it was still
I bought this cheap.
an attainable car.
Yeah, I bought this cheap. The quick story, several years ago when the E92 M3 came out, we did a comparison between all the different M3s, and I came home thinking an E46 M3 made sense. And that was about a $25,000 car. I'm like, man, I really want one. And then I started thinking, I'm like, well, the M3 makes sense. That's what the brain wants. But the heart wants a Porsche.
Yeah.
And I was looking at 993 Porsches, and they were about 25 grand at the point. And then I started thinking, well, the earlier ones are, again, what we grew up with. I had a poster of this car on my bedroom wall when I was a kid. And that was about half what a 993 went for. So I lucked into this car. It's a 84 Carrera. I was actually looking at SCs, which were the earlier one. The Carrera, you get a 3.2 liter engine.
Let's go around back.
Better fuel injection.
They can get a better look at it.
So I lucked into this for about half what I was going to spend on the 993, but it's an original paint car. It's a unique color, which I'm not a bright red car guy, but this is almost brown, which I like.
Yeah.
It's kind of subdued, very original. It already had the turbo Fuchs, which are worth a lot of money. I changed the tail. Originally, it had a turbo tail,
Okay.
which without the turbo flares, it didn't look right. It was great on the highway, it was really stable, but it was too much wing, not enough fender. So I lucked into the ducktail, which they did put on 74s. So I can kind of say it looks a little bit like a 74.
Okay.
There's a few differences, but you know, it's got some flair. But it's just been a great car. So yeah, bought it right, and since then, I have it insured for not quite 4 times what I paid for it.
Holy cow! So yeah, so what is a car like this, you know, reachable for today?
They've cooled off actually. 30s easily. I was looking at Bring a Trailer the other day. They're going, I mean, somewhere in the 30s to 40s, I would think. The slightly later Carreras are worth a little bit more. They have the G50 gearbox,
okay,
which a lot of people want. This has the 915 gearbox, which I like because the ratios, and it feels like a Porsche. And I like the earlier car. It's got a few little touches that are the earlier style, like the Porsche between the taillights is how they did it on the earlier car. It has the earlier steering wheel. So if you look at a car from, you know, like a 70, like actually someone we know in town has a real IROC car, like the real deal IROC car, and it's cool looking at it because we have the same steering wheel.
So an 85 Camaro then, right?
It's basically an 85 Camaro. So just some little things, like I lucked into it, but I like it. The seat's a little bit lower. So it's worked out.
So we talked with Tim a little bit about sort of the hierarchy of Shelbys.
Right.
You know, give us a quick rundown of kind of the hierarchy of 911s. What's where is this in the pantheon of 911 lore?
Kind of down here.
Okay.
I mean, because you have 911s that are $1 million cars.
Right.
I mean, a real, you know, IROC that they race is $1 million plus. 73 Carrera RS, $1 million plus. 65 first year for 911, they're worth a ton of money. The thing is, I mean, I've driven, you know, 65 911s. I've driven some really neat, rare 911s. This feels really close for way less money. So, like, there is no budget version of a Ferrari 250.
Right.
Right? It's, I mean, you could say a Z or a kit car, but there really isn't. This, it's almost funny. You get in a, you know, I got to drive a perfect 65 911, and I'm like, wow, it kind of feels like my car. You know, only my car's got a little bit more power. You know, this still has the pedals come up from the bottom.
Okay.
So what you were asking, so anything long hood pre-70, which is 73 and earlier, is now worth a lot of money. There's a lot of interest in 993s, which is the last of the air-cooled, kind of the final evolution. They didn't make a lot of them. Those are worth money. And then in the middle you have 964s and these. And then you could probably say a little bit below this is a 911 SC, and then the 2.7 liter cars get a bad rap, but in reality a lot of them have been fixed by now, so they had some head stud issues. So, but then again, like, this is the one I like.
Yeah.
Like this is the car. I like the big bumpers. I like the wheels. Like, this is the one I wanted.
So what was the difference with, what else were they making in '84? Where the Carrera sit in the model?
It was either you got a Carrera. Actually, someone will correct me. I don't think there was a turbo that year.
Okay.
Turbos came and gone. I could be wrong. Someone will probably correct me. I believe there was no turbo.
Yeah.
Because I believe technically, I read this once, fastest car sold in America in 1984. It's a total technicality because there was no turbo, and like Ferraris that year weren't good. There was no Lamborghini.
Corvettes were 285 horsepower.
It's a total technicality, but I'll take it. So also they made this, you could have gotten a Targa.
Okay.
Coupes are worth more than Targas. They're prettier. I like open air cars, but the coupe is the iconic one. So yeah, it's a usable car. That's the one thing I keep coming back to, is it's a very usable car if you want to, you know, whatever, drive it. I mean, the AC, okay, the AC sucks, but as far as old 911s go, and it's galvanized, which I like too. They started galvanizing them in the 70s. And again, it's got the 3.2 liter engine, so it's a lot torquier than an early car.
And it's so weird to think that this car existed contemporaneously with the 944.
Yes.
And you just put them in completely different eras in your head because they just seem like such different cars. Okay, so what's it been like to live with? I mean, obviously the car never needed restoration, but you probably needed some maintenance. So what's day to day? You know,
well,
what's it cost to keep it on the road?
We had to rebuild the engine. We did this as a project car way back, probably 7-8 years ago, and did have to rebuild the motor. The engines are usually really overbuilt. It's a 930 case. It's a strong engine. They're known for breaking head studs. So while we were doing a valve service with our friend Randy, who helps us with Porsches, he was telling me his stories, and he's like, yeah, they break a lot of head studs. Here's how I check for it. And he pulled the valve cover, and the end of one of the head studs was missing, which means someone knew that and put the valve cover back on. So at that point, we're like, all right, we should do it. We put ARP studs in. It was time to send the heads out, so we had the heads redone. Basically dropped the motor. Every seal is new. Every sensor is new. I mean, it basically kind of, you could say blueprinted, kind of. We did not split the case. He didn't feel it was worth, we needed to. The thing is, now it's good for another 200,000 miles. So as far as maintenance, they're real easy. Again, like the Shelby, there's such a wealth of knowledge out there.
Yeah.
Parts are easy. Porsche makes parts. Porsche keeps putting parts back in production.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Like through Porsche Classic, they keep introducing stuff like, you know, wheels, and you can. I mean, my dashboard's cracked. I can buy a brand new dashboard today from Porsche. The sunroof seal, mine is not 100% perfect. I have a brand new one at home in a Porsche bag. A lot of rubber seals, like all the little stuff you need, you can still get.
So
it's not bad.
The car's worth mid-30s probably. Yeah. What's a basket case? Like, is there a case to be made for these aren't really ready to be purchased and restored yet, or do you just go buy like? Yeah. If you buy a $10,000 one, are you going to spend 50 grand restoring it, or do you just go buy a $40,000 one, have a nicer car to begin with?
Because if you have to rebuild the engine, that's not cheap. If you have to put pistons in it or cylinders, you know, the jugs come off like a Volkswagen Beetle, that gets really, really expensive.
So what the engine rebuild runs by the time you're all in it?
6 or 7.
But if you're going to keep the car,
right? But I didn't have to put pistons in it.
Right.
So if I had to, I would have been real expensive. So if you have to do a full motor, it gets expensive. And if you have to paint it, if you're going to paint one of these right, you got to, you know, blow it all apart and paint it. But again, everything's available. So you do see some really rough cars that they might get redone in the future, but right now there's enough. They made a lot of these relatively, and there's a lot of them still out on the road. If you want a good one, they're still out there. So
let's walk around and take a look inside, because this is one of my all-time favorite interiors of any car. It's amazing when you look inside a 911. You grab my light. How big they are in there.
Yes, it's a big interior. It's got really thin pillars. It's got big windows. You can see out of it. It's a relaxing car to drive on the highway for that reason.
And you look at that center console, and I think people forget, like, that center console is open behind there. Yeah. Like, you could take your shoe and throw it to the left, the right side of the car, because that center console doesn't go all the way through, which I think adds to the whole openness of the interior.
The later ones had like 964s have a center console like what's in your MR2.
Yeah.
This still has a lot of 1965 in it. It's still got a lot of old in it. And by this point, it was a 20-year-old car.
And still has the left side.
That way I can, when I'm racing at Le Mans, I can get out a little bit quicker.
Is Porsche still doing that?
Yeah.
Because my 944 was on the right side.
That was a real Porsche.
That's true. It's just a Fiero with a body kit, basically.
But no, it's a very usable car. That's been a nice thing. I mean, you don't have much of a trunk, and you can't put people in the back seat.
Yeah, what's the front look like?
It's full of crap. I can show you. It's not that big because it has it holds over 20 gallons of fuel.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which is, on one hand it's great. On the other hand, when gas was real expensive, it kind of. Actually, I had more than once where the pump would shut off and I had to go inside and like tell an adult.
Have them turn it back on.
Yeah, so this is. I mean, it's got a little bit of a trunk.
Oh, but you could. I mean, that's big, and it's shallow, but it's big.
This should be buttoned up. It's not, because I keep the car on a charger, because as we were talking, it's been sitting for a little while. Just the reality of our world.
Yeah.
But
so, like my 944 that I used to have, these are galvanized too. And one of the things about that car is there was more oxidation on the aluminum parts than there was on the steel parts. Do these things rust anywhere?
Yeah, I think they do. This one, I've been lucky. It has. Partly it's because it's always been it's always been an indoor car. Yeah. It's a California car. Actually, this car was originally sold from Roland Olson Porsche.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, and I think it was in the Bay Area.
I want to hear this door again. That's just fantastic. Like that, and that's a sub 3,000 pound car, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, for it to be that solid, and it's amazing to look at these now. Like even after having the Mustang in here, this car is so small. I think my MR2 is bigger than this car. It's amazing how small these things are, and especially next to a modern 911 variant, how small these things are. So let's take a look under the whatever you call it, in the back.
So the release is here.
And I'm with you. I actually kind of like the big bumpers on there.
I do, and these work. I actually got bumped. I got bumped on the highway many years ago, and you can't tell.
So you mentioned you got it insured for a specific value. What's insurance cost on something like this? Is it particularly prohibitive or
no?
Or is it kind of fair?
Honestly, I have a couple of cars on the same policy, so it's a little hard to tell you what each one is. It's not bad because it's a collector car. So honestly, it's insured for agreed upon value. It knows that it lives in the garage. It knows I'm an adult. It knows I'm not doing silly stuff. But again, like we were talking, everything is available. Not everything. A lot of stuff is available new.
I didn't realize the oil cooler is up under the like. That's actually why that's there.
Well, there's one up front, and then there's another cooler. But like this, can you see this like rubber?
Yeah.
All right, that little elbow. When we had the engine out, mine had a little crack in it. This is available brand new. This is a brand new piece.
Oh wow.
This might be new. This is probably new. I mean, a ton of stuff is still available new. On the other hand, you can tell how car was not. They've adapted. Like it's got air conditioning here.
It's just kind of stuck up on top.
And like it's tight. There's hoses here, so to undo the air cleaner, you have to reach around. But there's the hoses here. So the way you do it is you ask your wife or someone with small wrists, say, hey, and actually there's a zip tie attached to it, so I can undo it easier. But it's interesting engineering just for how this car evolved over the years, how they added stuff. You can see there's an air conditioning compressor up here. But then
that's the AC conditioner.
That's AC, and then there's another one up front. So there's two.
So why does the air suck so bad on these things?
I don't know. Actually, this one was good. And
I guess if the condenser lines are going from all the way back here to all the way up there, it's not.
But there are people, you can make them better. Honestly, I haven't. Just with the windows open, it's a pretty airy car. I mean, if you're taking it out on a nice day, it's a pretty, you get a lot of air through it. I'm not daily driving this through the city in the hot weather. On track, it's nice. I've actually had this around Daytona.
Oh, nice.
And it ran cooler on Daytona than it did on the way back to the office, as far as engine temps. So, but again, it's if someone's thinking about getting one, the prices have dipped a little bit. It's a car you can keep forever. Free plug, Porsche Club of America has been awesome. There's a huge network. And when you're done with it, somebody wants it.
And how about general day-to-day maintenance? I mean, you really haven't put much into it as far as nothing really breaks on it.
Honestly, yeah. Knock on wood. Oil changes are expensive. It holds a lot of oil. Yeah. Big deal. You don't do it every day. That's the thing. No, it's not a car you're constantly tinkering with. And again, that's why you get a good one. I got a good one. I have a good mechanic. We've been through it. Valve adjustments every now and then. But again, it's way easier on this than a turbo. One turbo's got wicked expensive. Yeah. When I bought this, a turbo was like 10 grand more. Now a turbo is like well more than double. A turbo's, a $100,000 car. The turbo, it's a lot of heat, and the turbo's kind of in the way of stuff. So
you almost have to pull the motor to do much.
Well, you have to do it on anything anyway, but it's just harder. On this, it's not bad. And a real Porsche mechanic, they do these all the time. Yeah, you have to drop the engine. They're used to it. There's stuff like when you drop the engine, you take the AC compressor off, and you don't have to break the system. So
okay, just let it hang.
Yeah, in fact, what they have this. It's like a fender cover you'd have on a normal car. They have one that perfectly fits around here for Porsche service. Right here, it's got like a hard plastic plate on it, so you just put the compressor right here on the fender, hooked up, and it's like that's the normal service. But yeah, not much. This has been like such a benign car, and in fact, it sits on the charger. I checked, I've had to put a little bit of air in the tires, turn the key, fires right up.
And I think the punchline to the whole story is the E46 M3 that inspired you to end up with this has now depreciated to near the point where you got one of those. Yeah.
A year ago, they depreciated to the point. So I bought one of those, bought it from a friend, bought a really, really clean E46 M3, bought one, price was right, got it home, got a notice from our insurance company the other day, hey, you may want to look at the value. According to them, it's worth a little more than double what I paid for it.
Wow.
So it's like, but the two cars look great next to each other.
Yeah.
And they do complement each other. The M3 is more of a real car. Actually, the biggest concern with this, like you said, it's small. And taking it into like Orlando, you're a little invisible, and it's original paint, and getting bumped. A normal bumper is going to hit about here, so you get a little concerned. And actually, one other small thing, and Tim mentioned it with the Shelby, replacement parts. Porsche makes a lot of stuff. On some stuff, I cheapened out on some engine mounts, and they went bad. And moral of the story, it has Porsche engine mounts back in it because they went bad. But other than that, it's been real easy. Okay,
so prediction. You got two cars sitting in your garage that you paid very similar money for, and both have accelerated. The M3 is now, I think, winning the acceleration war.
Yeah.
5 years from now, what's worth more?
I don't know. That's a good question. That's a good question. This is a keeper, though. I know you can't have a favorite child.
Yeah.
Just driving it over here, again, I haven't driven it much. The past couple of months, we've been traveling, whatever. Boy, the sounds, the smell, those gauges. You have these big video gauges. You have the view over the headlights. And it's like, quick, name a famous race car driver who drove a Porsche 911.
Yeah.
I mean, Richard Petty raced a 911. I mean, it was in the IROC series. But everyone has raced one of these. And you get out there at night, like coming from here to my house to your house, there's a stretch where it's it's dark, but the fenders, you got those big glowing gauges. I've never used a radio in this car. I have it in there for show. I don't know if it's hooked up, to be honest. It's just that experience, and it's like, that's what this car is all about.
Steve McQueen never drove an MR2.
That is true.
Had they been around, though, I think he wouldn't have driven anything else.
He would have had like a fleet of them.
All right, let's let these folks go back to about their business here, and we'll close things out. Big thanks to Chris behind the camera, who is flying our brand new camera on the Steadicam, and I see his knees starting to pop and click a little bit, so we're going to give him a break. Folks, thank you so much for watching tonight. Thanks to Tim and David for I could listen to that all night. Let's do that a couple more nights. Isn't that fantastic? Thanks, Tim and David, for bringing two of my favorite cars that hang around our office out, and thanks to everybody for watching. Once again, if you can check out our friends at crcindustries.com, the next time you are at a store, the next time you are at AutoZone or Napa or Walmart, and you are looking for automotive chemicals, and you reach to that shelf and you grab, see, I can go to any shelf in this garage, because I'm a slob and stuff scattered all over the place, and I can find CRC products. Just like you can walk into any store and find CRC products. If you're reaching for CRC stuff, you know that you're not only getting a fantastic product, you're getting a product from a company that supports the world we live in. Folks, they support motorsports at every single level, amateur to professional, everything in between, and fantastic programming like this. Also, check out our friends at Autobooks Aerobooks. You can check them out at autobooks-aerobooks.com. Go back a week, go to our YouTube feed, and you can see a bunch of cool books that they have there. If you're ever out in Burbank, actually if you're anywhere from San Diego to Santa Barbara, you owe it to yourself to visit them at autobooks-aerobooks.com. Right there in Burbank. Go by the store, check it out. They always have cool stuff going on. Not only is it a fantastic bookstore, it is a hub of the automotive scene in Southern California, and they're fantastic people to boot. That is it. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Next week, it is that sort of dead zone in between Christmas and New Year's, but darn it, we are here and we are going to live it up, and we're going to make some delicious food. We are doing a track food special next week. We've had a bunch of folks send in some recipes and some cool ideas for awesome, easy, delicious food to take to the track, and we're going to make it and eat it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And if anybody's, it's going to be just basically me and my mom probably watching, even if she's still up that late. But if you're around next Wednesday and you're looking to get away from your weird relatives, come join us on the show, and we'll have a good time, and we'll eat some delicious food. Folks, thanks for watching once again. I am JG Pasterjack. This is Grassroots Motorsports Live, presented by CRC Industries. You can check us out every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. on our Facebook and YouTube feeds. Check us out at grassrootsmotorsports.com for everything else that we do. It's all lovely and fun. Once again, I will see you next week. Good night.